You might know today's guest from the popular Instagram series Salary Transparent Street. Hannah Williams is passionate about creating conversations around salary transparency, hoping to promote a more inclusive and equal professional landscape for people of all ethnicities, genders, and ages. We're chatting with Hannah all about it. This is Advocate Now. Well, Hannah, you're a content creator, but you've carved out your own path in the influencing industry by tackling a unique topic, salary transparency. How did all of that start, and what made you want to pursue a career dedicated to that topic?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Sonia. I think the number one thing was really finding out I was underpaid in my own career. Before doing this, before being a content creator, I used to be a data analyst, and back in the day, I found out that I was underpaid about $20,000 to $25,000 in my role just because of a lack of transparency. And the more I thought about it, I fixed my situation. I looked for a new job. I got my fair market rate, but that didn't solve the problems that are still every single day people are encountering in the system. And so the best way I could think to fix it was to go on the street, ask strangers this really taboo question, but to prove that there's value in transparency and to encourage others to see it as well. And hopefully that will make some change in the system that we've got right now.
Yeah, and only 20 states have paid transparency laws. Can you break down what that means for employees across the country?
Yeah, so pay transparency laws are a mix of a couple different things. Like there's like salary transparency clauses, which are specific that a company, with more than 6 employees or so has to list a minimum and maximum salary range in their job description. And, that varies based on the state that you're in. And so I always tell people, check your state's laws because each state is different. Some have salary history bans that prevent employers from asking about your prior salary, which is a really beneficial ban because that salary, if you're interviewing for a new job and they ask for your previous salary, if you were underpaid before, they're going to keep you at that bottom rate. And so it's really hard to catch up. And so there's a reason these laws exist, and hopefully we can get them to all 50 states soon.
Well, you mentioned, talking to people about how much they make. It can definitely feel uncomfortable talking about pay with coworkers, almost like you're doing something wrong. But just to clear things up for people, it is illegal for companies to prohibit employees from talking about wages, right?
Absolutely. So per the National Labor Relations Act, unless you are a farmer, a railroad worker, or a government employee, basically, if you are a private employee, you are protected under the NLRA, which means that you have the right to discuss your salary with your colleagues. The only stipulation is that you should not be sharing other people's salaries with other people. Only talk about your own and use that as an entry point to have these conversations with your colleague and invite them to share their own salary as well with you.
Well, I want to talk about your series. It's called Salary Transparent Street on Instagram, and it promotes salary transparency. When you first created this series, did you feel uncomfortable asking random people what they make, or has that changed over time?
Definitely. People would not guess, but I'm actually very shy and introverted. And I think I just had the will of God in me one day. And I was like, I'm going to go do this because I see the value and someone has to. And I'm so glad I did. Every time I go out, it is still kind of scary. And I always try to approach people that look the friendliest, which is my cop out. But it's important, and whenever I have the conversations with people, my favorite thing is, they're always a little like, what are they asking me? Like, why are they asking me this? And then when they walk away, they're so happy that someone asked them about their work. And no matter what you make, I think what I see in all my interviews is people are proud of what they do to make a living. And it's important to talk about it.
I work in sales for a very large hotel company.
How much do you make in your role?
I make $89,500.
Nice. Do you feel well compensated?
Yeah, I do. I always think there's room for growth, but we do have a very generous bonus program as well.
Is there anything that stands out or anything that you've learned from interviewing so many different people about their salaries?
Yes. I would say the number one thing is honestly kind of sad. It's that I see gender pay gaps and racial pay gaps play out in real time, which is always a little disappointing, but it's the reason that we do what we do, and hopefully the thing that we'll fix with our transparent series. But also, another thing is sometimes I feel that the most important careers in our society, hospital healthcare workers, teachers, people that, run our bus system or metro system, they are the lowest paid compared to, workers that are part of the profit machine of capitalism, tech workers and software engineers. And it just points out a really interesting system and how maybe we should explore ways to empower these other careers that bring a lot of value to our society.
Well, it's interesting because 79% of employees say that they want some form of pay transparency, but why do you think it's still such a taboo topic?
I love this question so much because I feel from my interviews with people on the street, we're starting to see a shift in change and energy and momentum and how people are talking. And I feel like talking about salaries is no longer taboo for workers because we want it so much. We've been talking about it for the last 2 years. Really, the taboo now is resting with business leaders. They're the ones that are still, happy to push this narrative that talking about this is uncomfortable and it causes problems and drama in the workplace. That's not true. Workers really want this because it's going to really fix a lot of problems with unequal pay gaps and issues with pay structures not correlating to responsibilities and value brought to a company. I think this is something that workers are really excited about, and hopefully we can transfer a little bit of that excitement to business leaders to help them see the value as well.
Yeah, and speaking of unequal pay gaps, you also created this platform to combat discriminatory tendencies in the workplace, which affect women, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community. So how would you say pay transparency will decrease the likeliness of discrimination?
Yeah, what I love about pay transparency is it's so direct. When you have salaries listed openly in a workforce, there's nowhere for the inequalities to hide, no way that you can justify someone that's brought into a company brand new, fresh out of school, making more than someone that's a seasoned employee training that employee. So you really just put those salaries and those numbers to the forefront, you bring it to the light, and there's no way that you can let systems where marginalized communities are held back continue to proliferate. So I just think that the value of it is that it puts those numbers out in the open, and there's no way for discrepancies to exist anymore.
Absolutely. And in addition to having open conversations about pay, which are so important, are there other ways that we can all help to move the needle forward?
Yeah, I love that question. I think the number one way that you can help if you are happily satisfied with your pay and you're still trying to help move the needle forward, just have these conversations with your colleagues, bring them out for coffee, take them out for lunch, ask them, talk about your own salary and say, I didn't negotiate, but I was wondering if you did. Open the conversation, bring it to the table, and ask them if they want to share their salaries as well. You never know what you can learn from other people when you start talking about your salaries. You might learn that you missed out on something by not negotiating, or that there's a benefit that you could have negotiated for that you didn't. There's only wins when people talk about salaries because there's so much to learn from one another. So just start having these conversations with your friends, your family, if you're too scared to do so with your colleagues yet. But the next step is your colleagues. I always tell people you don't have to be on Salary Transparent Street in front of the internet to be transparent. The true value happens in your personal life and with your colleagues.
So true. Well, Hannah, I love what you're doing, and it just shows the power of social media and people like you as well, how it can work for good. So thank you so much for telling us all about it. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com.